everyone. I hope you guys are all doing well. Welcome to our session, Superheroes Framework for Student Engagement and Sense of Belonging. Our session today, I'm going to introduce myself. I am Dr. Evelyn Ortega, and I'm joined by Dr. Magdalena Maggie H. de la Teja. And we are so excited to be here with you today. Thank you to Upswing for inviting us and accepting our proposal. As we begin our session, I just want to remind everybody that there is the closed captions options to make sure that you're able to enjoy the session at its full capacity. So if that's a feature that interests you, please make sure to be able to turn that on now for yourselves. So for today's session, we're going to be focusing on We're going to be focusing on a sense of belonging and social connectedness. So that ties into the previous session. I know Dr. De La Teja will be going in more depth with that. I'll be doing the big reveal on what the acronym FACES actually means, talking to you about this superheroes framework, how it came about. Also giving you some data, because that is very important, from our pilot event that we were able to conduct this past spring, and some quotes from some of the participants. And then we're going to get to the most enjoyable part, which is being able to engage with all of you in a participant-guided discussion, where we talk about how you can bring this to your campus and make it a reality there as well. As a reminder, if at any point throughout the presentation you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. And once we get to the participant-guided discussion, we'll be able to address all of those questions. Now, before we continue with our session, I'd like to read this land acknowledgement that you will see on the screen now. I acknowledge that the land each of us live, learn, and thrive on are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded homelands of Indigenous and tribal nations. Our campuses are located on the ancestral lands of the Mohican and Munsee Lenape people, whose care and keeping of these lands allows us to be here today. I acknowledge the genocide and systems of oppression that have dispossessed Indigenous people of their lands, and we honor and respect the diverse and beautiful people still connected to this land. Now I'm going to hand it over to my co-presenter to be able to tell you a little bit more about us.
First of all, I'd like to say that it's really my honor and pleasure to work with Dr. Evelyn Ortega, Associate Dean of Student Affairs at Passaic County Community College. So I'll have to say that Evelyn and I met in 2015, and she reminded me about that as we were talking about the session, that we met at the NASPA inaugural Escaleras Institute. And that was in 2015. I was faculty and she was a participant. So we have stayed in touch during all this time. And the fact that we are here today is because of the NASPA Community Colleges Division Latinx AO Task Force that we are both members of. And we're both very active with that organization. Just to quickly to reintroduce, I am a consultant and also an external contributor to the JED Foundation, and I'll be talking a little bit about it during this presentation. Next. Okay, so we have learning outcomes. We actually want you to be able to do these things. So pay some close attention to this. Identify the components of the superheroes framework and the meaning of the FACES acronym that will be revealed. Describe the purpose of the superheroes framework and how it supports students' engagement, sense of belonging, and social connectedness at your campus. Explain the steps to follow to implement the superheroes framework at your campus. So remember, identify, describe, explain. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the sense of belonging and social connectedness. I've already mentioned Terrell Strayhorn, who in 2019 defined a sense of belonging. He said, it's a basic need and human right, a fundamental motivation, sufficient to drive behaviors and perceptions. Its satisfaction leads to positive gains such as happiness, elation, well-being, achievement, and optimal functioning. So you can see that in 2019, Strayhorn was thinking about the well-being of our students. He also says that students' perceived social support on campus is a feeling or sensation of connectedness, and the experience of mattering or feeling cared about, accepted, respected, valued by, and important to the campus community or others on campus, such as you, such as faculty, staff, and peers. Next. So I want to talk about JED's comprehensive approach. It's to mental health promotion and suicide prevention for colleges and universities. It was actually developed in collaboration with a Suicide Prevention Resource Center. And it is evidence-based. In other words, they have really looked at a lot of data to show its effectiveness. It's a public health model, and it is used to assess efforts currently being made on each of our campuses. And JED helps to identify our strengths and also our areas for improvement. So as you see from this wheel that shows the comprehensive approach, JED really strongly believes in equitable implementation. And we've been talking about what equity means. And I hope that many of you are thinking about what are some changes that we can do on our campuses to have each student's experience be a positive one. So these are the areas that the JED campuses look at with resources from the JED Foundation. We look at the development of life skills. I'm not going to be able to go through what all the life skills are, but I know many of you know what those are. Another wheel that's really important is to promote social connectedness, which we've been talking about. It's how the students feel about being on campus, whether they feel the faculty, staff, and others care about them, including the people who might serve them lunch or who might clean their campuses. Every person is important in showing the students that they matter and help them to stay connected. So one thing that's really important is to identify students who may be at risk. And you do that by data collection, as we talked about in the previous session. We also find that increasing help-seeking behavior is critical because many students who actually need help are the ones that don't reach out to us. The other very important one is to provide mental health and substance misuse services. So I hope all of you are providing mental health and substance misuse services. And then what's important is that you never know when a crisis is going to hit your campus. So when it does, it's important to do the following of crisis management procedures. So one of the areas that we really work with on campuses is helping them develop those procedures. And the other one to prevent suicide is by promoting means safety. So each one of these strategic areas is delved into by the JED Foundation resources, but I don't have time today to go through each one of them. Next. So one thing that JED does is it really looks at data, its own impact. So we've talked about impact. So they have a report. It's called A Decade of Improving College Mental Health Systems, JED Campus Impact Report. So that was data from 2013 to 2023. So basically, the data indicated that when a school takes more actions to implement a comprehensive approach, i.e. more JED strategic plan recommendations are implemented, the student outcomes are better, underscoring the significant value of a comprehensive, purposeful approach to supporting mental health of our students and reducing risks of suicide. Next. So what do the research findings indicate? As I've mentioned, the JED Foundation research shows student social connectedness on college campuses contributes to good mental health and well-being. Strayhorn found that sense of belonging positively impacts academic achievement, retention, graduation, and for students of color, self-identity development. Self-identity development for our underrepresented students is so huge, and there's a lot of research about that. I'm a very recent publication by Johnson and Strayhorn. I recommend it to you, A Blueprint for College Students' Sense of Belonging, April 25, 2025, in Diverse Issues in Higher Ed. Note that it is important for us to, as I've said before, meet students' basic needs of food, shelter, safety, etc. You can determine what your students need. It's also important to design culturally relevant programs, and we'll talk a little bit about that during the session, and to create positive connectedness and community. Next. So next, we have Evelyn, who's going to actually share with us about the superheroes framework.
Thank you so much, Maggie. I think it's really important, all the information that she was sharing with us in terms of resources and tools with the JET Foundation and all of the research that's been done for that 10-year report that she was mentioning. It's just such a vibrant piece of information and different data that can help us to make sure our students are succeeding and getting access. So now we're going to get into the main part, which is the superheroes framework. And I want to tell you a little bit about the institution where I work at, which is Passaic County Community College. We're located in New Jersey, and we are one of the 18 community colleges within the state. We are a JED campus. We are an Achieving the Dream Leader College, a Hispanic-Serving institution, and a minority-serving institution. So now that I told you a little bit about my institution, you are probably super curious on what does FACES stand for. So let me let you in on that little secret, which is not so much of a secret. So it stands for friendship, acquaintance, collaboration, encouraging, and success. And this is part of something that I cultivated this last fall, 2024, going with the motto of building connections as we celebrate the faces of our community. And so with that, we wanted to be able to have connections as we celebrate these faces of our community, because we want to ensure that our students are engaging in friendships, having new acquaintances, embarking in collaborative efforts and getting involved, as well as encouraging them towards their success of graduation and any future endeavors they may have past that point. So now to talk a little bit more of an overview of the superheroes framework, and you're going to see a lot of different visuals. I'm going to get into each piece and tell you why it's important. And hopefully it can assist you in bringing some of this back to your campuses as well. So the superheroes framework is a concept that I cultivated last fall, and it was actually as a result of me being home watching TV with my significant other. And we were watching a show called What If? And so for those of you that may not know, it's actually an animation type of show focused on alternate realities regarding superheroes such as the Avengers, Captain America, the Hulk, which is Dr. De La Teja's favorite, Wonder Woman, which is one of mine, Thor, and many others. So there was one episode in particular which focused on Native Americans and what they had been given the opportunity to have access to this superpower that was actually from another world. So this had me thinking about representation. And then I thought about another show that came from Marvel called Echo. And this had amazing Native American representation. And it was also done as a collaboration from the beginning point of creation, working with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And that was to ensure the authenticity regarding the language, the garments, and everything else that was represented within all of those episodes for that show. So once I had that idea about superheroes and representation, and it being something that I thought could be applicable and relatable to our students, I wanted to then actually speak to our students, because the student voice is key. As administrators, we may think that, this is such an amazing idea, but if the students aren't interested, if it's not something that's trending for them, let's say, then we would be spinning our wheels when we should actually just be including them from the beginning in those conversations. So that's exactly what I did. We have this amazing student programming committee, and I went to one of their weekly meetings to be able to present this and just initially ask them, if we did an event about superheroes, talking about Marvel, DC, Is that something that's still popular? Do students, still find that to be interesting, or is it something that's already passed? Immediately, they said, yes, definitely Marvel, DC, superheroes, they were in all the way. So we decided to work together. And what that meant is that they were going to work on certain aspects of the event. So they worked on the food and the activities. And we planned to do it in honor of Asian American and Pacific Island Heritage Month. So we also focused on some incentives, because who doesn't like free stuff? And it always helps to garner more students there. But then we also wanted to make sure that we got to give that prize at the end. So if you look at the bottom towards one of the middle pictures, you'll actually see one of our students who actually won, us using Wheel of Names to be able to pick our winner at the end of the event. And so we also wanted to make sure we had some really great visuals, because if it's appealing on the screen, then it's more engaging. And so that was actually thanks to Canva, because I by no means am a graphic designer. So I was able to utilize a comic strip template that Canva actually had available. And you'll see that someone incorporated in just even the titles of our slides in this presentation as well. And so with that, it had some great visuals for the students to be engaged, as well as animations. Now, the flyer that you see to the left of the picture with the incentive winner is actually a flyer that was put together by a student within the student programming committee. It was important to make sure that they had buy-in as well, and they were part of the process of creating this event. And so they also selected all of the superheroes that we would have as part of our presentation, which, if you look closely at the flyer at the bottom in the middle, you'll see the character known as Miss Marvel, who actually happens to be a New Jersey girl, specifically Jersey City. And so that was really important, because representation matters. These are all students that are attending a New Jersey institution. So we wanted to make sure that that was reflected, as we wanted to keep it in mind as being helpful to make sure that it's something worthwhile for our students with cultural relevancy, as Maggie was mentioning before in terms of the research she was talking about with sense of belongingness and connectedness. Now, as you can see on the right-hand side, there are some samples of what was some of our slides in the presentation, which included our superheroes as well as real-life heroes, because it was really important for us to be able to emphasize some of these superheroes and their superpowers, but then also to talk about who are the real-life heroes. I selected the real life heroes that best aligned with what would be relatable with our students, based off of what they had provided in terms of the superheroes list. Now, as you can see on here, China is one example of the countries that they chose superheroes from in honor of Asian, American, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So with that, one of the superheroes that they picked was Shang-Chi. There's a movie, Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings. So if you haven't seen it, by all means, go ahead. Maybe that'll be a weekend thing for you guys. But what I wanted to make sure of, in case anyone in the audience didn't know who these superheroes were, because maybe they knew some but not others, and to keep them engaged, is I made sure there was at least a 1-minute YouTube video that was actually able to tell them about the superhero, as well as to ensure that then, if they weren't aware or they knew a little bit, they were able to capture that information. And that was for anyone who was in the room with us, as well as anyone joining us virtually, because we just offer this as a hybrid event, because we are a multi-campus institution. And so through that, we were able to then also show a real life hero from the same country being represented. In the example you see on the screen, you'll see the individual named I.M. Pei, who's actually the architect responsible for the glass pyramid. So if you've ever seen anybody taking pictures by the glass pyramid, he was the architect for the actual glass pyramid. And so many of our students maybe had seen that, but didn't know who the architect was, that they actually were from the background of Chinese American. And so that helps to relate our students in terms of the majors, as well as to knowing that knowledge is a superpower as well, whatever it may be. And so it allowed them to look towards different superpowers in regards of maybe what they're studying or different interests they may have. So a little bit more in terms of the real life heroes. It's important to make sure that then our students understood and saw that these superpowers could come in a variety of ways. So it could be in relation to your academic study, but it also could be in relation to you being a super kind person. So for Hawaii, we actually had a US Senator who was known for his kindness, which allowed him to have the ability to assist in bringing consensus in a meeting. And so that was really important to showcase to the students, because we may have some students who maybe are shy, but they're super kind individuals, and they may think like, oh, I don't have any superpowers or skill sets. But actually, your kindness is something that then you can take to be able to have in meetings, to be strategic, and to maybe bring everyone in the room to the same conclusion, or at least work towards the same goal. And so that was key to be able to mention that. And some of the other countries that were selected by the student committee were also Japan, Korea, and Pakistan. And so that was just samplings, and we let it be known that this is just a sample of the countries that we were going to be displaying with them. Now, as you can see, the last picture all the way to the bottom left is actually many of the students who were part of the student committee, as well as some of the volunteers that we have day of the event, who wanted to make sure that the event ran smooth and that we had proper participation as well. So now I want to turn it over to talk to you a little bit about some of the data from that particular pilot hybrid event. So that event took place towards the end of April. We had 45 attendees in person and virtually combined. So we did offer a Zoom link. The event had been promoted through our campus TV monitors. We also had it announced at our monthly academic council meeting, which was important for us to then make sure that then the faculty knew about it as well. And then on the day of the event, we also had word of mouth with outreach from the volunteers that you saw in the previous picture, going over to maybe reaching out to some of our gamer students who may have a particular interest in wanting to talk about superheroes. And so what you see on the screen here right now is from our pre-survey, because we conducted pre and post. And so 2 questions that I wanted to highlight from that pre-survey were focused on the superheroes and superpowers. There were only 5 superpowers that we specifically named within our surveys, both in the pre and the post. And that consisted of building friendships and connections, finding my voice and speaking up, feeling like I belong on campus, finding mentors and support systems, and managing stress and well-being. We asked the students before the event started, what superpower do you most wish to strengthen in college? 36% of them said managing stress and well-being. This was key because it helps us to be able to know where our students actually are, not just us guessing, and being able to help them in terms of what might be some of their needs and what resources maybe we can align with them or inform them of to be able to assist in those endeavors. We then also asked what superpowers would help them feel seen, valued, and or supported on campus, because we wanted to make sure that our students are actually feeling seen, valued, and supported. It's one thing for us to think that they are, and it's quite another for them to tell us what they actually need. And so 45% of them actually said building friendships and connections was a superpower that helps them feel seen, valued, and supported. So that's just a little bit of the pre-survey. Now, in looking at our post-survey data, there were 3 questions that related back to the same 5 superpowers I already mentioned in the pre-survey. And we asked, which superpower do you feel you've grown the most in? And 42% of them said building friendships and connections, which, as I just stated in the previous slide, was one of the ones that they named that they wanted to be able to help them to feel seen, valued, and heard on campus. So all relating back to that sense of belonging and connectedness that Dr. De La Teja had mentioned earlier. We also asked them to think about themselves in their future superhero self. So we stayed in line with the theme and what superpower they would want to have developed. 50% of them said managing stress and well-being, which is a great thing for us to know because it helps us to be able to know what initiatives we may need to be focusing on within student affairs, but also as a college, and specifically for our wellness team. And I say that because our wellness team has peer leaders who undergo different projects to raise awareness and to be able to expand information. And so that is always helpful for them too. So then that way, then they can work on those initiatives and be targeted of what they need to convey to our students. We also asked if they could create a superhero to represent our campus community after today's event. What would their superpower be? 42% of them said that it would be finding my voice and speaking up. And this can partially be contributed to the fact that during the pilot event, we did allow them to be able to break up into small groups to be able to discuss with other students that they may or may have not seen before, because we just randomly clumped them into groups. And so it was to be able to discuss what were some of the takeaways that they had towards the end of the event, what did they learn the most, and then from each of the groups, we had one of them have to stand up to present back to the larger group at the end. And the last question that you see on here was more so just an overall rating, where 83% of them said that they were either very likely or at least somewhat likely to participate in a future Superhero Faces event after today. So that's just a little snippet of data, not too much, hopefully. And so now that I've presented some of this data, I wanted to be able to demonstrate a little bit more, not just with the graphics and the charts, but how the superhero framework could be utilized in terms of types of questions that can be asked, but also the most important part, I think, is always hearing from the participants themselves, which is through quotes. So as you can see on the screen now, one of the questions that we did ask in our surveys was, which superhero would best represent you today and why? And as far as what some of our participants said, they mentioned 3 different superheroes: America Chavez, Dr. Strange, and Spider-Man. And because I think it's important for you to hear what they wrote, I'm going to read out each of the quotes. So one student said America Chavez because she's Mexican and love the actress playing the character. Another said, I like to think I relate a bit to Dr. Strange. I may have some wits, but I tend to try and fly solo, which I am working on, work on a team. And then lastly, I feel like the superhero Spider-Man represents me best because of his sheer determination to help others. I am always making time for myself to help others and will continue to do so even in the most struggling times. So now that I've shared a little bit and mentioned that this is a pilot event, meaning we've only had one so far, you may be wondering where this is going to continue going and where we foresee it, at least for our institution, on what we'd like to do. So you may be thinking, well, what's the next step after you've done one event already? So for us, it's actually focusing on making sure that this becomes an event series throughout the year, making sure that then we are looking at certain months such as Latinx Heritage Month, Native American Heritage Month, Black History Month, and Women's History Month, just to name a few. And because we are a multi-campus institution, we would be incorporating our other campus locations of Passaic and Wanacue to be able to ensure that we are reaching all of our students. And so with our Passaic campus, we primarily have nursing and surgical tech students there. So the plan would be to ideally have one of these events take place in March for Women's History Month, and emphasizing specifically, when we're talking about the real life heroes aspect, those in the medical field. And for our Wanacue campus, we have many performing arts as well as culinary arts students. So we would want to have the Superhero Faces event in November, potentially focusing on Native American Heritage Month, to be able to have our students participate in connecting that rich culture through performances as well as food, and having it potentially be a collaborative effort with the Lenape people, which the Wanacue campus already has a relationship with. And then another aspect also is in looking at engaging in effective assessment, we would want to continue to collect data. So continuing to do pre and post surveys at each of these events to help improve the series as we continue to roll it out. And then also at the end of next year, being able to do a whole year review cycle to analyze any trends, any items of improvement that we noticed throughout as we continue to move the Superheroes Framework pilot along its way. So with that, that concludes our portion of at least providing information to you. So now we'd like to be able to do the participant guided discussion.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your presentation. I wanted to encourage everyone to post any questions that they may have in the Q&A. We do actually have two questions already, and I'm happy to read those out loud. So we have one person asking, I am curious to know what specific examples of culturally relevant programming have shown promising results for improving student retention and graduation. I work for an HSI and am seeking guidance on how to incorporate cultural responsiveness in the curriculum.
Maggie, do you want me to take it or do you want to start?
No, why don't you start and I'll just add.
Okay. I think when it comes to the curriculum aspect, although I'm on the student affairs side, I think just being able to meet the students where they are. And so I think going beyond, if let's say it's a particular month, going beyond of only celebrating and discussing it during that month. I think it should be something that's engraved and put into the entire curriculum for the entire semester, so that way then it can be that students can bring up different examples and relevant pieces throughout the year. So during the event, although we were talking about Asian American and Pacific Islander heroes and superheroes, I had a student who wanted to bring up a Latino hero and someone that he thought of when we were talking about takeaways and discussion. And so opening it up so that it's not just constrained to that particular month or that particular period, I think would be a great way. And the other piece is just having the students input to see what would they like to see overall and what will actually motivate them and make it relatable to them.
Yes, I also want to mention that what's important, as Evelyn said, is for us to talk about the culture and awareness of it during those special months, because those are very special to all of us who are Latina, African American, female. Those months do mean a great deal to us. We want to spend time working with our students, having them guide us on what they want to do and having students involved in the planning, as Evelyn has mentioned. But I also want to mention that we can do things throughout the year. So for example, we can have art distributed. There are students who are very artistic, and we can actually have art all over the campus that represents the different cultures. That's very amazing and wonderful. And it's a way to learn about different cultures. We can have dance performances that show us all the moves that are so beautiful. And oh gosh, I love the Indian culture. Yeah, I like the hop. I like the dance. In fact, when I was vice president of Tarrant County College, the students knew I love all these things. They got me on to perform with them. So anyway, there's so many exciting ways that you can make things culturally relevant. I also want to mention that there are many associations, including Excelencia in Education, that have a lot of different ideas. Just go to their website. You're going to learn many ways in which you can be culturally relevant. And I would say the same thing for the HBCUs, the Achieving the Dream, Lumina Foundation, all these associations, NASPA. They have a plethora of ideas for how you can be culturally relevant for our students.
Wonderful. Thank you both for answering that. We have another question from someone here, and they are asking, I may have missed this, but how many students participated in the superhero event?
We had for our pilot event, we had 45 students altogether, and that was a mix of in person as well as on Zoom. And we also recorded this session as well because our plan is to ideally down the line be able to have a YouTube playlist through the college and through our division. So then that way, then if students ever missed it, they always have the opportunity to go back and listen in.
Wonderful. As we wait maybe for one more question here to come through the Q&A, I know something that stuck out to me as you all were talking was the moment where you talked about how you shared videos with the students about the superheroes that you were going to talk about to just level set and make sure that they were aware of, what these superheroes were. And I Really loved that concept because I think, we are all coming from different backgrounds and experiences, and sometimes not knowing what's being talked about can be very off-putting to students, or people in general. So I was just curious as you went through, this event and this experience, was there any other ideas that you had, to just encourage that level setting within this framework and with the students that you're working with?
I would say also asking just for suggestions when it came to the real life heroes. We had five for the pilot event. One of them, which I didn't get to mention, actually was a suggestion from someone from the committee. They were a little bit shy of coming up with other heroes, but I did share with them also who the heroes were, just to make sure that they were okay and that they had buy-in with it, and so to be able to understand as well, because it is their event too. And so I didn't want them to feel like I'm the administrator. So then that way, then like it's my event. I came up with the concept, but the whole point was to have it be student focused and student centered in them being part of the entire process too. So I think that aspect was important. And the other part too came with the food and the activities as well. So our student programming committee came up with a plan of several options, and then we discussed it so that they were actually part of the planning process. So I think that was key. When they came up with some activities, we talked through, well, why are we choosing this one? What's the meaning behind this? Why is this one important? And is it feasible given our spaces and what we have, as well as purchasing, which was another component for the student programming committee to learn about.
One of the things I wanted to say, we did have learning outcomes as part of this session. So I'd like you to think about how you would implement the superheroes framework on your campus. Being creative is so very important, and Dr. Ortega is obviously a very creative person, and we all have that creativity within us. So I hope you will look at this and work to try it out on your campus. And I also want to mention that listening to students is coming up as so very important right now across our campuses. The JED Foundation work that I've done, the faculty and administrators and staff and team members all talk about how they listen to students. And in fact, just recently, I heard presidents saying how important listening to students is. So I hope that you will integrate the student voice into your programming.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We do not have any other questions at this time. So I know that some folks are very interested in possibly receiving a copy of this deck. So we'll definitely see if we can share that afterwards with everyone as well.
Thank you, everybody. And please feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are on the screen. So if you have any questions that maybe you didn't want to ask in the group, or it comes to you 5 minutes later, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be more than glad to help out to make sure that you could bring any parts of this framework to your campuses.
Thank you both so much. So